The BBC advert you mentioned, and often it's like often a budgetary thing because with that, it wasn't a huge budget, but it was like a broadcast thing. It was shown during, was it last year? Yeah, it was shown during Glastonbury coverage last year. I was like, okay, well, let's not have sets. Let's just have almost, I mean, I was kind of looking at like product photography backgrounds. So it's like we've got these like block colored backgrounds
Yeah.
with this infinity curve. But then within that, you've got a character and this little vignette of a scene with a few props. In some ways, it was like the people are in their own little world. So that came from the constraints of the time and the budget and everything. Yeah. And it was a kind of a theatrical approach. But then people, I mean, it's been screening at loads of festivals and stuff, and people kind of wrote to me and were like, "Oh my god, I love," because it almost emphasizes the tactility of the stop motion even more because it's contrasted against this slick advertising, negative space basically. So it's interesting. I think sometimes, the constraints of the project lead to what becomes the USP and the thing that people go, "Oh, well, that's interesting," because afterwards it's like an intent. I mean, obviously it was an intentional thing, but it's like it's a response to restrictions that then becomes a really interesting artistic choice.
A wonderful art is made because you have no choice.
Because you have to work so much harder, and therefore, I mean, thought goes into everything. But I guess you're like, well, I really have to make this work because otherwise it's going to be really terrible.
And that is what makes it unique. That's what makes it interesting. Otherwise, you're just making stuff like anyone else is making stuff.